Hello and welcome to Adamant Lives Reviews, episode 15, D for Destruction. Ooh, D for Destruction. I hope there's vampires. And no, I'm not making a Vampire Hunter D reference. I'm referencing the way Dracula would sometimes sign his letters in the book. I have some class. This is actually episode 16 of the show, but episode 14 went the way of all flesh. Burnt to fuck by the BBC. We open on a firing squad and an officer who's channeling the greatest one-line character in the history of film.
Get your eyes to the front, men!
The cop from Withnail and I.
Look here, my cousin's a QC. Get in the back of the van!
Now, this firing squad, I really don't know what I'm supposed to think about this. The UK still had capital punishment at this point, so I'm not supposed to be horrified by this. And it's the opening, so this is clearly the villains at work. I'll just assume that the fact that the British military typically used hanging is important and that this is an illegal execution. And what a weird term to use. Illegal execution. The sort of thing that really should be a tautology, but technically isn't. Like shithead homophobe. In some barracks, General Beardy O'Doctor has called Adamant in for some important business. I hope he's asked to investigate who gave Patrick Trout Nicholas Courtney's job.
Colonel? Colonel?
Turns out that Adamant used to be a volunteer colonel in the British Army, and because the concept of being declared legally dead is unheard of, he's still technically in service. General O'Doctor is using this to send Adamant in to investigate a series of suspected murders. He mentions one of the victims has been killed via a grenade, and that's fair enough, but the other, a soldier called Jones, was killed by a firing squad. Getting shot 7 times in the chest by 7 different rifles at the same time doesn't strike me as a possible accident. They should be investigating some definite murder. And if they don't suspect the other soldiers, then at least a crack team of fuzzy wuzzies. And apologies to everyone who has no idea what I just referenced.
Colonel Mannering in command.
The commanding officer is called Mannering? Okay, I need to give some background information here. Dad's Army was a famous British sitcom of the 60s and 70s set in the Home Guard during World War II. The Home Guard basically was the UK's volunteer defensive force in case of invasion. Their commanding officer was called Mannering and one of the main characters was called Jones. Hence my fuzzy wuzzies comment. Whether this is a reference or a coincidence, it's making me want to see an episode of Dad's Army where they all get murdered.
Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler, if you think we're on the run? We are the boys who will stop your little game. We are the boys who will make you think again. 'Cause who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler, if you think old England's done?
Anyway, Top Brass wants to know what's going on in this regiment. What with all the murders and crap. So they send Adamant in to get some answers. So why not get a regular superior officer to ask about it? Or get military intelligence to investigate? Or why not even give Adamant a modern uniform? Well, the last one's easy to answer. If they did, then Miss Jones couldn't be borderline abusive about his uniform. Admittedly, he does look a little bit like Michael Jackson. So how exactly is Miss Jones going to get herself involved this time? It'll be Private Benjamin or G.I. Jane decades in advance. Although Miss Jones with a shaved head growling, "Suck my dick," might be worth seeing. So episode, please have her infiltrate the unit. Holy shit, even their set looks like the one from Dad's Army. And then a whole damn scene dedicated to letting us know that the soldiers are up to something. Just in case we mistook the murder at the start for some innocent firing squadding between friends. So, Adamant arrives and they just kinda leave him alone with their colonel. Do they usually just let what appears to be either a crazy person or a joker in an outdated uniform walk in and be left alone with the colonel?
No wonder we lost the Empire.
Anyway, as per military rules, no one told the colonel that Adamant would be arriving and becoming a superior officer. Although they're both colonels, Adamant has about 70 years seniority. And Mannering's not impressed.
I will not give up my command. Not to a popinjay.
Oh, them's fighting words, if you're Winston Churchill. Now this is an interesting dynamic, as not often the hero literally outranks the villain and they're in the same army. As per usual, Adamant's fame is dependent on the writer of the story, so exactly no one in the regiment has heard of him, even though he's world famous for killing shit for Queen and country. So they decide to murder him. Oh dear.
If you should happen to be in the firing range when the colonel is making his inspection.
Matter of fact, I do need a bit of practice.
I, for one, am unimpressed with Miss Jones' lack of imagination in her disguise. She's dressed as Miss Jones, one of the main characters in a cult 60s British television series.
I've always been attracted by uniforms.
Ooh, well, how about this one then, eh?
Yeah, it suits you.
So it's time to try and kill Adamant for the crime of dressing like Sergeant Pepper.
The targets are behind you, Corporal. Are they now? Fancy that.
Like a submachine gun can kill Adamant. So Colonel Mannering briefs his men about their plan to attack a local army installation to show that they're still needed. The government, you see, is disbanding the unit. I have to admit, this treasonous plan isn't that far out the way for Dad's army, Mannering, the self-important little psycho that he was.
And in 1 hour you will reassemble at the vehicles, collect your weapons from the armour, and carefully check every round to make sure they are all blanks. Is that clear? Dismiss!
Blanks.
That's right, Adamant, blanks. Hardly treason.
It doesn't matter if they're blanks. You're committing treason. Probably about 5 types of terrorism, too. You shouldn't look so smug. The actual army you're attacking won't have blanks. So all this talk about staging a mock attack while armed with blanks is great and all, but Adamant, isn't there something you've forgotten to ask about?
Why did one of your men just try to kill me in the firing range?
Thank you. Anyway, the guy who Adamant knocked out is gone, and so's his weapon.
Colonel Adamant, you're wasting our time.
Adamant literally outranks you. And there should be bullets on the wrong end of the firing range. Point them out. So they find the guy lying dead with a bayonet in his back. Don't these idiots know anything? Adamant has a license to kill. And kill. And kill. And kill. And kill. Since they arrest him for the guy's murder, I'm guessing he killed and killed and killed and killed and killed and killed. One too many. So they lock Adamant up so they can do their plan. Their plan, which is to attack a nuclear missile facility, while armed with blanks. If this happened in real life, the most likely outcome would be all of their guys getting killed, and later on, Adamant would be found locked up when the soldiers come to the barracks to try and work out what the fuck exactly just happened. And hey, is Miss Jones still fucking that guy in the closet? Wow. Anyway, no beautiful woman / trusting thing leading to his knockout this episode. I'm not sure if it's because they're trying new things out or because smuggling a beautiful woman into the barracks just for this flashback would be a bit too much work for the scriptwriter to do. Or maybe because they couldn't find a dress in the Sergeant Major's size. Whatever the reason, he's still knocked out. But why did they knock him out? They already locked him up. It's just adding injury to insult. At least they changed the audio in the flashback. Keeps things fresh. As the army drive off to what logically should be certain doom, Miss Jones breaks into the barracks. Even though she spent all episode in a closet located inside the barracks and sneaking in would seem to be unnecessary. Anyway, her Adamant detection powers begin to work just in time for him to chase after the army.
Mr. Adamant. I thought you were dead.
Then you do not know me very well, my dear.
I have a skull made of vibranium. I just felt like a nap. Why did they knock him out? It wasn't necessary. They knock him out and he's immediately being woken by Miss Jones. This was pointless. Like the flashbacks ever at a point. I'm seeing a flaw in the villain's plan, which I'd remind you is we attack the nuclear place so the army sees that we're useful. Because assuming that any of these guys survive, the army's reaction will surely be, these guys are fucking nuts. I'm glad we're disbanding the regiment.
And remember, I don't want any unnecessary violence. But I don't want to see the guards taking shots at us either. Good luck.
So by now it's pretty clear that the Sergeant Major is the guy murdering the guys, and the Colonel is well-meaning but stupid. So what's the Sergeant Major, who clearly doesn't give a shit about the unit, really after? I have no idea. And now is usually where they spell it out. How interesting, there's something that's not obvious. But since it's the 60s, I'm going to assume he's working for the Russians. So, the part-time soldiers against all odds manage to defeat the real soldiers and no one even manages to fire a shot. At the same time, Miss Jones and Adamant are on their way. Unfortunately, Miss Jones saw Mad Max recently.
Miss Jones, you are meant to be filing the chain, not my wrist.
I really can't blame him for getting a little angry. He's yet to kill anyone this episode. Anyway, the villains make it to missile control, and this guy who looks a lot like Sergeant Bilko is suddenly single-handedly making this episode make a lot more sense.
Colonel, you've just walked into the biggest court-martial you've ever known.
I think the poor dumb bastard just worked out how much of a poor dumb bastard he is. Anyway, Adamant manages to get into the base by walking up to some of the men and showing them that they're dealing with a psychopath.
Then if your orders include murder, go ahead. Come on, man, use it!
Having taken control of them, he then orders them to stop Miss Jones, because women aren't allowed anywhere near action scenes, unless they're the ones getting killed. The Sergeant Major is planning on firing the missiles, safe in the knowledge that the Colonel will get the blame.
But you're insane, Sergeant Major.
But why fire them? I'm still thinking he's working for the Russians. But why, after he all but admitted that he was the villain to Adamant, did he leave Adamant alive and knock him out? Unless he expected that bang on the head to kill him, to which I say, bad form, Sergeant Major! You clearly haven't been watching the series.
How did you get in here? Through the door.
Best answer ever. So what's he going to do with the missiles? Fire them at London.
London? Right in one, Colonel, all the way to London in 30 seconds. So that's what you are. A traitor to your country.
Says the guy who recently decided to attack his own missile facilities for no reason.
This is missile control. Get me number 10, Downing Street. Now listen, carefully, because I shall only tell you once. You have got 1 hour to load $1 million in gold into an army helicopter, fly it out here and land it at the entrance of this trench.
Oh, just extortion and shit. How fucking boring. And $1 million in gold? How exactly are you planning on escaping?
And now how are you going to escape? On one of your missiles, perhaps? I'll show you.
By being stabbed. Genius! They'll never arrest a corpse. Only slight problem, you didn't quite perfect your zombie virus before dying. Anyway, Adamant kills everyone except the Colonel because, I'm assuming you've been watching, he kind of does that. He kills people. And the Colonel gets killed by someone else, so everything's tied up for the ending. The ending where Miss Jones arrives with some soldiers, just in time to get yelled at.
I thought you were in trouble.
I am never in trouble, Miss Jones. The only trouble that will arise is you're trying to explain what you were doing in a purely male preserve after the hour of midnight. Would you kindly answer that phone if you wish to help? Please do as I say and answer that phone.
And of course, she's left explaining everything to the Prime Minister because... funny, I guess. This is a fine example of Adamant. The strong parts are very strong. The stunt casting of Patrick Troughton in particular, and the accidental reference to Dad's Army is great for fans of vintage British television. The bad stuff is mainly story-based. It's very stupid, but it's not quite insane enough for that to be a good thing. It's not one of the very best episodes of the show, but it's a damn sight better than the last one.